Hello and welcome everybody to our panel discussion today on exploring the future of open scholarship, current practices, trends, and inspirations academic institutions. I am Francesca Brazzarotto. I am the Customer Engagement Manager at Karger and one of the organizers of this event. And I'm really excited today to announce that this will be the first of a new series of events organized by us at Karger. And the series will be called Karger in Conversation. It will be a quarterly event that will bring together experts from the publishing industry, librarians, information specialists, and researchers from across the globe to discuss some of the latest trends and topics in scholarly publishing. And we're starting today with our first panel on open access. And we're already organizing the next one in late November on the actual impacts of AI and the new technologies in research, library work, and publishing, of course. So stay tuned for more of that. Just a bit of housekeeping before we start. This event will be recorded and made available to you at the end of it. We had over 100 people registering from across the globe, so we all know that September is quite a busy period for everybody. There's a lot of webinars going on and events, so we will make sure that those that could not attend today or will be able to just partially attend today will be also able to watch this later on in their own time. Please feel free to drop any of your questions in the chat or in the questions box on your screen so that we can monitor them and address them to our panelists at the end. Lastly, there will be a short survey at the end of the panel discussion just to get a bit of your feedback, and so please feel free to complete before you log out. This will allow us to better our events in the future and also bring you the content you need. I will now leave the stage to my colleague and Karger Open Science Manager, Beth, who will moderate today's session. So, Beth, up to you.
Okay, thank you, Fran. And thank you, everybody, for joining us, both in the audience and in our panel. So as Fran said, I'm Beth Bailey. I'm the Open Science Manager at Karger, and that involves a lot of work with open access. And I'm also co-lead of our Open Science Task Force, along with a colleague in editorial development. Now, at the health science publisher that I work for at Karger, we are open for open. We embrace open science and open access, and we're really doing a lot to work with our partners to get there to open in a sustainable way that works for the researchers, the institutions, the funders, everyone else involved. And it can be challenging on many fronts, as I think we all are aware. Now, my point today is not to talk about me and not to talk about Karger, honestly, but I just brought that up because I think that underlying aim of striving for open access and an open future in the best way for everyone is something that all of us here on our panel have in common. And we are very fortunate today to have them here, our panelists, to hear the perspectives. We have 3 champions of open access in the library and consortium communities, and they're really hands-on, doing the work, helping to implement it for their organizations and for researchers. They understand some of the challenges, and they can share lessons that they've learned, as well as share insights on what maybe the future could look like for scientific publishing and open access. Before I start with introductions, I apologize in advance for butchering any names or institution names with my accent, but we have Niklas Villen, who is a licensed manager for the BIBSAM consortium, operated by the National Library of Sweden, representing 95 organizations. Some past experience includes several different positions at Uppsala University, where he also received his master's degree in information science. And we have Fred Flagg, who is the Open Research Specialist at Aston University in Birmingham in the UK. And his academic library experience has been with institutional repositories and open scholarship, previously also at the University of Leeds and Goldsmiths University of London. And we have Paola Galimberti, the Director of Performance, Quality Assurance, Evaluation and Open Science Policies at the Università degli Studi di Milano, or University of Milan, where she's been since 1990. She's responsible for the institutional repository and data repository, Diamond Open Access University Press, various open science topics and training. She's also an editor at the Directory of Open Access Journals. And in addition, we have the honor to have with us someone who is a very important party that sometimes is missing from discussions about open access, and that is a researcher. He's not just any researcher, he's really an especially motivated, engaged, and thoughtful one. And he can share that researcher-author perspective that's often missing, but it's so crucial. And he can speak both as a researcher and as someone who is based outside the global north. That is Dr. Jose Candido Javier Jr. He's a pathologist focused on surgical pathology, teaching, and research. He's a professor at the school, and here's probably my worst butchering, at the university, or at the School of Medicine at Centro Universitario Católico Unisalesiano Auxilium and Botucatu Medical School, which are both in Brazil. As well, he is a Karger ambassador. He's one of the first members of our new ambassador program that just launched this year. So with that, let's get started. So first, I would like to pose a question for each of you from an institution or consortium, Paula, Fred, and Niklas. And I'd like you to give us an overview of what your organization is doing right now in terms of open access, what you yourself are doing, in a practical sense, what your main activities are, and how they fit in with the overall strategy of your organization and what you're trying to achieve. Paula, would you like to go first?
Okay. Thank you, Beth, for this invitation. It's a pleasure to be here and to discuss about these important issues. I work at the University of Milan. I'm a librarian, but I don't work in a library. My unit is called Performance, Quality Assurance, Research Evaluation and Open Science Policies. And it is important because my university sees a strong link between open access, open science, and quality assurance, open science, and evaluation. So a specific unit was devoted to these issues. We are responsible for strategies of our university, policies, guidelines, their implementation and monitoring, what is really very, very important. We are responsible for the tools, the institutional repository, the data repository, the APC Central Fund. And we are responsible for trainings. We have a broad program for PhD students, for early career researchers, and departments. And we are responsible for the Milano University Press and Open Access Diamond University Press. So we try to implement the 8 pillars of open science defined by the European Commission: fair data, research integrity, next generation metrics, future of scholarly communication, citizen science, and education and skills, reward and incentives, and European open science cloud. Starting from a cultural change, and that is the reason why we have this broad program on trainings.
Fred.
Thank you, Beth. I am an open research librarian in a library team at Aston University. We're a very small team with 2 librarians and a manager. Aston has 2 open access repositories, a publications repository and a research data repository. So part of our work is, of course, supporting researchers to use them and also to administer the metadata and publications in them. We also do a fair amount of training of staff and PhD students. The publications repository at Aston also includes PhD theses, and all of our theses now are online by default, except for a few exceptions where there are reasons of copyright or otherwise. So we support PhD students in making their theses open access. And generally support Aston staff and students with both making things open access and copyright, but also with the mandates and policies they have to follow, and make them as painless as possible. Though it's not impossible. It's not possible to remove all the pain points in for open access policies, but also generally, as an institution, the whole university has quite supportive policies for open access and open research data. Also, Aston has an open research statement where we're trying to build knowledge and awareness of open research generally, and to increase the use of open research practices in our university and beyond. Also, on the licensing angle, Aston has a preference for the most open of the Creative Commons open licenses, the Creative Commons Attribution, or CC BY license. So trying to support academics to use that license whenever possible. Personally, I do some of the training and also support authors, academics, and students in following the somewhat bewildering array of policies, but also helping them to make their publications and research open access as much as possible. Briefly, we're a small team and we're trying to build our overall open research activities with our limited capacity, but we do have plans to do things with open educational resources. And actually, we've just currently digitized the last 1,700 theses that we had that were originally print, and they've been scanned. And personally, I'm in the process of trying to take those scans and make them all available as a current project. But so hopefully we'll be doing more and more for the wider cause of open research soon, but at the moment it's mostly outreach and supporting our repositories. Thank you.
And Niklas.
Yeah, thank you, Beth. I think you summarized it pretty well. I work as a license manager for the National Library of Sweden, and we are signing and negotiating agreements on behalf of the 95 institutions that makes up the BIBSAM consortium. So the BIBSAM consortium is all the Swedish research institutions, all the government-funded research institutions, as well as government agencies and research institutes. So, and the BIBSAM consortium has been around since '96 and started as a consortium for subscription agreements, but we are going more and more into open access, and have been done so since 2015. And I work in also a small team, librarians, and we are taking care of the agreements that we have. I think I have about 15 agreements, so we are a bunch of license managers that does that. And we, since we've been working with open access for quite some time now, we have agreements, publishing agreements with all the major publishers, which makes that all, I think it's about 83% of all the articles that are published by Swedish researchers, or have a Swedish researcher as a corresponding author, is open access and is covered by the BIBSAM, one of our BIBSAM agreements. So we've come quite far in that sense. So we're helping the libraries. We're negotiating on a central level these agreements. I take care of the Karger agreement by chance. And we are quite proactive. I think we are about 30 agreements at the moment, but we are bringing on more agreements each year. So that's where we are. I think we publish about 14,000 articles yearly, somewhere around that. And my role is I specialize in everything that's related to Excel. So all number crunching and statistics and price modeling and so on. That's my job basically.
Okay, great, thank you. And Jose, for you, you're coming from a different side of it, so I'll put the question to you a bit differently. What has your experience been with open access, and have you published open access yourself? And why did you not choose open access?
Thank you, Beth, for your kind invitation. And today I'd like to give voice to the researchers from underdeveloped countries like Latin America, Africa, and some countries from Asia also. As a reader, then open access is awesome, but as a researcher, it's complete out of our reality. What I mean is the amount of money that you have to pay to publish a paper is higher than our salary. So to make an easy comparison, for example, a junior university professor in Brazil, you make around like $1,000 per month. And the taxes for publish a paper are around $3,000, $4,000. So we cannot afford this. We can save our whole salary during months to publish a paper. We cannot close our eyes because open access is not a trend, it's a reality. But I have a kind of paradoxical view of open access because I'm afraid to become just a viewer and not an active member of international scientific society, because it will be easier to be in touch with the cutting knowledge papers, but at the same time will be harder and almost impossible for us to publish. So you should dive the discussion and try to find solutions to not let anyone behind.
Thank you. And also, yeah, as if you could think in your role as guiding younger researchers as well, you're also a Karger ambassador. What do you think can be done to help them understand open access, how or why to publish it, or how to deal with the challenge you described of not being able to pay for it? I say how can you help them, but maybe the question is also how can a university, or how can they get help?
We can discuss many strategies. For example, when you are a reviewer for a magazine, you don't receive anything for this. Why not create discount tickets for reviewers? And sometimes they are younger researchers, and they can use this discount for publishing their papers. We should incentivize the government, the companies to help the researchers to try to find possible solutions. We have to be resilient and try to adapt the open access perspective for different realities when you think about the amount of money that each university can spend to make these agreements. And I think we also can incentivize the professional societies, like the international societies. They can help their members to have their paper published. So we can work on a different ways and try to thrive this challenging for us.
Thank you. Yeah, that's interesting. Now, a question coming back to each of you, and getting to kind of the practical part. There are various artifacts that are part of the research cycle, but today we're focusing on publishing. So we can think in terms of like three major parts of the article versions that are part of the academic journal publishing process. So there's the preprint early on, the accepted manuscript, and the version of record. And each of these are talked about in different ways in terms of achieving open access. And I'd love to hear from each of you what you think are advantages, or if there are advantages to any of these, and if so, what are they?
Yes, I think with these different versions, we have definitely advantages. For the preprint version, the author may upload this version in specific repositories named called preprint servers, and they can start to gather comment from the community. If preprint is peer-reviewed, can be accepted in different assessment procedures. We have example for instance, peer community in, or also bioRxiv is connected, and medRxiv are connected to open peer review infrastructure. So I think it's really very important for the early circulation of knowledge. Obviously, you know that when you cite a preprint, each preprint has its own DOI. You must declare that this is a preprint, and that could means that it is not peer-reviewed. So you as a researcher know that you are citing something that is not peer-reviewed, if it is not peer-reviewed, and you as reader know that, as a researcher, know that it is a preprint. Postprint are same version but different layout. Same version as the version of record, but different layout. It is obvious better because they are peer-reviewed. You can upload. This is normally the version that you may upload in an institutional repository. The concept that publisher want some guarantee, for example, embargo period, and this embargo period could be also very long. Obviously, the published version is the optimal version to disseminate the content of a research, but if it is not native open access, it is not accessible. But I don't see a problem in these different versions, because when you cite an article, you have also to mention if this is a preprint, a postprint, or a version of record.
Thanks. Niklas, would you like to address this?
Well, I don't work on the research level, so I don't think I'm perhaps the right person to tell about the advantages, perhaps. But and also we have a different strategy in Sweden. Like, for example, if we have like preprint version, if you have a like Denmark had in the last few years, a green open access policy where publicly funded research, you can publish green open access. But in Sweden, the research funders demand that your research is going to be immediately open access. So the version of record, or the different version of records or accepted manuscript, I don't think that's a big issue in Sweden. At least not on the National Library, perhaps on the universities though. So I'm gonna leave that unanswered.
Okay, thanks. No, that's good. And yeah, I want to come back to Sweden's approach too. But first, Fred, I wanted to ask you about your views on the different article types. And yeah.
Certainly, thank you, Beth. I mean, I think there are advantages and disadvantages to all of them, especially from the open research and open access perspective. I mean, for the published version of record, of course, the advantages are it's the most finished version. It's pretty much what authors expect to by and large, and even students, because they're much easier to cite. Of course, the drawback or disadvantage for open access is that there's always a cost, even if there's an agreement negotiated, someone has to pay for the open access cost, which can cause problems of equity. Where some research, as Jose mentioned, it's very expensive, and without institutional or national funder support, it's very impossible to pay for it, essentially. So, I mean, that's for the published version. I mean, for the postprint, or also known as the accepted manuscript, I mean, the advantages are, of course, that it has all of the same content as the version of record. It just doesn't look quite as good. It has been peer reviewed, and again, the research content should be functionally identical. So the research and the science are there. But of course, the drawbacks are it's quite complicated. There is probably a green embargo period for most, in most cases, for the accepted manuscript, and also trying to help authors and researchers understand the complexities there can be quite tricky as well. For the preprint, I think it has advantages and disadvantages as well, but I think there's a heck of a lot of potential for it. It's essentially it's a final manuscript draft, so it's after draft. It's a finished piece of research, but of course the biggest drawback is that, as Paula mentioned, in many cases it won't have been peer reviewed, although there are open peer review projects which can use preprints, such as Peer Community In and others. ASAP Bio has a program as well, but I think preprints have come some ways during the COVID-19 pandemic, that media coverage of preprints, journalists are now pretty well educated about them, because before they weren't. They just say some research says, and they wouldn't, they refer to a preprint and not explain the details of, oh, this is a preprint, a preprint paper which has not yet been peer reviewed. And now the awareness is there that most media coverage will say, we're talking about some research that hasn't been peer reviewed yet, so take it, your mileage may vary. Of course, the other benefit of preprints we saw during the pandemic was speed, because there's no peer review process, and it's preprint servers have a very basic amount of quality. They check some of the basic quality and author things. They don't peer review it. A preprint can be made available and disseminated very, very fast. So I think, although in my work at Aston and library, I mean, of course, the accepted manuscript and version of record are the versions we usually need to get from authors into Aston's repository, because the peer-reviewed research is the part that funders and other places will look at. I just think there's a ton of potential for preprints. I just saw it somewhere recently that on GitHub, someone has created a tracker piece of software. You have to actually get it from GitHub and download it, but to connect preprints to their published version, because sometimes many publishers will accept journal submissions that, or will potentially accept journal article submissions that have been a preprint once, so they can be published as a preprint and made available immediately, and then potentially reviewed for publication in a journal. And again, there's someone's created a piece of software where you can track individual preprints to the journal article, because they, as Paolo mentioned, the digital object indicator, a preprint will not usually have the same digital object indicator as the published version. So I just think there's a ton of exciting potential with them. So they're an area I'm looking at and I'm quite excited by personally. Sorry, I think I went on a bit there, but hope that answered it a bit.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's very interesting. Jose, from your side, is it something that you are also kind of, aware of? Are you making decisions around the preprint and, the manuscript version or postprint and the version of record?
As Fred said, the content is almost the same, but we have to rethink, why are we doing research and publishing our papers? Because we want to share experience and we want to make our results visible. Then it's easier to read a paper in your final version. But it's also acceptable to publish them in a preprint version, because you can reach the audience before, in advance. So if you want to communicate with other researchers in different parts of the world, it's time that you can make, but you have to reduce the time between the preprint and the final version. And for me, it's not acceptable to have preprints published without peer reviewed. because the peer-reviewed process is the way to guarantee the quality of the paper. Then if you want to publish a preprint, it should be previously reviewed by 2 or 3 reviewers, depends on the magazine we are talking about.
Thank you. Yeah, that's interesting to hear. Now, I did want to come back to Nicholas and what you are working with intensively are, I think, transformative agreements. So 2 parts to my next question for you. One, it would be great if you could briefly explain what a transformative agreement is to you and your colleagues, you know, kind of how you define it, what it means for you. And then, yeah, the BIPSOM has been blazing a trail to open access with a very clearly laid out strategy. And I think you're just past the midpoint of an action plan that goes from 2022 to 2024. So I wondered if you could give us an update on the progress and you know, things you might have learned along the way of implementing it.
Absolutely. Well, a transformative agreement for us is a subscription agreement with a publisher that is transforming into a publishing agreement, and that transformation can take time, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. But that is a transformative agreement. It's supposed to transform from reading only to publishing. But then how long that process takes can be different, of course. And with strict open access policies in Sweden, we see also that the global transition to a new publishing system is relatively slow. So, and as a result, the Swedish institutions have to finance both publication of open access articles as well as subscription to paywall content for several years. So, with this in mind, the BIPSOM Consortium Steering Committee has adopted an action plan that was in four points. One is to continue and sign up reading and publishing agreements for both hybrid and open access journals with the CC BY license. Also sign more publishing agreements for fully open access journals. Explore and support alternative business models and publishing paths with learned societies and small publishers, as well as that review copyright requirements to promote open access. And we are in the middle of that process, but as I've mentioned before, we have agreements with all our major publishers, which takes up 83% of the publishing within the BIPSOM organization. So we have pretty good open access coverage, so the researchers don't have to pay the publishing charges themselves. These are covered by the agreements that are covered by the university libraries mostly. And we don't sign any read-only agreements anymore, which actually resulted in us canceling a few agreements where we couldn't implement a publishing part in that agreement. So we're canceling read-only agreements. And for the new agreements, only the CC BY license is permitted. So we don't accept CC BY NC and D licenses and so on, just the CC BY license. For smaller university, because we have a lot of agreements, it's hard to bring on more agreements because we don't grow in personnel, but we have better workflow for smaller publishers. We, for example, have template agreements that we work with that we implement, and we also see that more of the university presses and the learned societies are adapting to established publishing platforms like RightsLink or OS Switchboard and so on, and that makes it much easier for us to just get an agreement going fast. So, and we only accept price models based on publishing from 2024 and forward, and that's a big adjustment for our institutions, that the old prices were pretty much based on their subscriptions, but now the price models are based on their publishing output. So some institutions get quite high price increases, and a lot of institutions get price decreases. So we're balancing play field, so to say.
How are you balancing that? That is an especially tricky matter in moving to open access, that everybody would like to pay the same or less, but yeah, when you shift the paradigm, someone will end up having to pay more.
Yeah, we try to look at the price in two ways. One, the total fee that we are paying for an agreement that is not supposed to change that much, and also what the single institutions are paying. But we also, for our new agreements, we can show them that if you as an institutions are publishing a lot, you're paying more for the agreement, and if you're publishing a lot, you get more research grants, so you are getting more money in some way. And we also see there's a big unbalance in our pricing models. We see that, for example, 20 years ago, when some of the prices were established for some of our major agreements, an institution that is a university today was a university high school back in those days, but they've become a university and they have more researchers and more research output, so they are supposed to pay more. And I think most of them think that is fair, but we have those discussions on a high level. We discuss this on the Swedish Association for Higher Education Institutions and the Rectors Conference, so that discussion is held on a high level. So it's not only up to the library to handle those price increases.
Okay, thanks. Maybe quickly, I don't know, Fred or Paula, do you also have some thoughts on transformative agreements? I want to make sure to also get to Diamond Open Access, but first, as Nicolas said, they haven't proven necessarily as quick as some people thought, in creating a transition. Do you think, what do you think their role is in the transition to open access for your institutions and your regions, at least?
I think that the transformative agreements are not really a part of open science. They are a business model, neither transparent, nor equitable or accessible or affordable for all. They should have been temporary, but they were not. They should have been cost neutral, but they were not. They don't, and this is the most important point, they don't produce this cultural change that we need to implement open science, because the researchers have no idea of the cost of scholarly communication. Anyway, I think transformative agreements are here to stay until institutions will be willing to pay for them and will have enough money to pay for them. I think also that the changing factor could be the reform of research evaluation. The COARA and the Coalition of Reform Assessment could lead to a change in the importance of this brand for researchers. And I think that beside transformative agreement and beside the traditional way of publishing, we will find in the future public infrastructures, scholarly-led or led by institutions. So this is my opinion.
Thank you. And Fred?
Yeah, I mean, for the moment, so I should say, Aston University, we have currently participate in 20 agreements. And of course, the main thing we look at is, yes, they should be temporary. And of course, they need to provide good value. The JISC consortium in the UK negotiates most of the agreements, and then individual universities choose from the agreements that JISC has negotiated which ones make sense for that university. I think JISC has negotiated about 30 something, actually probably quite similar to the 30 something that Nicholas mentioned for BibSum, but Aston's gone with 20 of them. Yeah, the transparency, of course, is the biggest lacking part. I mean, some publishers are all different, but the actual cost is not very transparent. And the part of the problem is, of course, they will, if an institution like Aston, some of its funding, some of the institution's funding comes from a national funder that follows Plan S, it's going to have to be quite temporary because, you know, the Plan S has said that to comply with Plan S, you can't use transitional agreements past the end of 31st December 2024. So that there is sort of an end date for any funders or consortia following Plan S. At Aston, we require researchers using agreements to use the CC BY license, even though the agreement may not mandate it. But so, you know, the most open license is the best one, the one that we ideally the one that researchers should use. But again, we require our academics to use it. I do wonder, you know, if some funders have, or some publishers have gone with a green open access open model rather than transformative model, and I wonder if there's some potential for that as well. Although I wholeheartedly agree with Paola's point that community-led infrastructure is what needs, or even, you know, national or internationally funded infrastructure might be, well, from my perspective, a good solution to some of these problems that transformative agreements probably aren't going to be able to solve, because again, they are either they're temporary or they're not. And if they aren't temporary, they're not transformative at all, are they? They're a new version of the expensive so-called big deals that libraries used to subscribe to. So it's interesting to see what happens in the next couple of years. But for the moment, they work fairly well, and the only big thing missing is transparency for most publishers, I would say.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think that leads well to the next question I had. I wanted to ask Paola about more of that community-led kind of infrastructure. I think you're very involved with Diamond Open Access. Yeah, so I'd like to hear more about your experience with that. And do you think Diamond Open Access is a feasible and really sustainable model for publishing platforms and presses? And if so, what are the ingredients that are needed to make them successful and sustainable?
Yes, we have started our open access Diamond adventure in 2008 when we established an OJS platform. We started with 2 journals, and today we publish 60 journals, mainly in the humanities and social sciences, but also in the earth sciences, nursery, veterinary sciences. And we register millions of downloads each year. At the beginning, the main challenge was the cultural change and awareness of the opportunities offered by the web, mainly for humanities and social sciences. Later, the main challenge was to maintain international standard of quality and to make evolve the platform and the practices according to the international best practices. The work on practices and quality assurance and new model is continuous. We work continuously with our journals on this. In 2020, the Milano University Press were funded, and we publish now books, also books and book series besides journals. Is it sustainable? I think that the main challenge now is to have a balance between what we spend for open access gold, hybrid or transformative agreement, and for diamond. open access, because at the moment there is a big imbalance. So there is not equity.
Yeah. So you said the challenge is to find the balance for how you spend on those different models.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Is that
very important was and is the support of the governance, obviously, and of the researchers.
Yeah. And from everybody else, I'm also curious, do you think that the diamond model can be sustainable? Is it sort of something that complements the other ways that we get published and open access, or can it sort of replace the current system? Does one of you want to tackle that?
I can try. On the question of if the potential for diamond, so again, diamond journals are, or sometimes called platinum journals, are open access journals where they're free to read and free to publish in, which is amazing from both the researcher and reader perspective. I think, of course, the problem is that the sustainability is a question. In my work, I recommend diamond journals to authors, and if authors are looking for funding for open access, say, well, there are journals that you don't need any funding for. One way to find them is with the director of open access journals has a search where you can search the DOAJ for no APC journals, and there's a whole long list. Presumably Milan and other publishers come up there when you look. But of course, the problem is the sustainability and the infrastructure cost, because no one would say that maintaining servers and developing servers is free. There is definitely cost in time and energy, and of course, the great thing, of course, that most of them are community owned by scholars and their institutions, but there isn't, it's hard to find the resources to cover it. So it's if a diamond open model were to be able to replace a current publishing model, it would need a lot more resources than diamond publishers have or get, I guess. So that's the question of where do the resources come from, and that's the open question for diamond journals that I don't know if we have any way of answering it at the moment, but I hope they succeed. I hope that the model works, because it's a great model.
Nicholas, would you like to say anything about diamond open access?
Well, I was struggling to find the correct definition of diamond open access. Is it, I mean, if it's free for the authors and free for readers, I mean, for Sweden, for example, if a researcher is trying to find a journal to publish in, they will find that most of the journals that they can publish in, they won't have to pay any APCs, but because that cost is covered somewhere else. And of course, there are no free lunches. So I mean, in a diamond open access model, someone has to pay for it. And I mean, there are enough money in the system to do that, obviously, but with the current research assessment model that we're using today, that's not going to attract enough researchers, unfortunately. So there has to be more incentives for them to publish diamond open access, and how that research is valued and assessed. But as BIBSOM, my organization, BIBSOM isn't an organization per se, so we don't have a diamond open access policy, but the National Library of Sweden might be different. The Swedish government has asked us to come up with national guidelines for open science, and we expect to publish those guidelines by January next year. So perhaps there will be something about publishing on diamond open access platforms in there. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing those guidelines. Now, I think Fran has appeared to make sure that we allot some time for questions from the audience.
Yes, actually, there's two already. I would say that this one is a good segue for now, and then there's another one that is a bit more complex. So let's start with this one first. So, are there any model agreements for health professionals to use so that there is more equitable access to quality healthcare, like incentives in relation to low and middle income countries? So I think they're talking about model agreements. So, we're talking about transformative agreements, we're talking about diamond open access. So I guess this is, a question for the panelists. Do you know what could be another model agreement that could help lower to middle income countries to have equitable access to quality content and be able to publish, I would guess?
I think it's so complicated to rank the countries because, for example, from my perspective, Brazil, from World Bank, we are in the upper middle group, but it doesn't show how amount of money will be dedicated to research and education. It shows only the wealthy from the country in general. So it's hard to say that this country, I know we need this perspective, but we should find a way to classify how much money the universities, the researchers have in different scenarios and try to adapt these agreements. Because as I said, for us, it's out of our reality. If this open access now is increasing the gap between scientists in different countries. Why? Because when you publish an open access article, you have a higher chance to be read and a higher chance to be cited. Then I can afford the open access taxes. Then my papers are just for subscribers or people using alternative websites. So you should rethink this type of agreements and also how to classify the different countries and different scenarios.
Thank you, Jose. Anybody want to add? Because then we have the second question. But if you want to add on this.
I mean, it's not an agreement, but okay, you can support the initiative, but I think that the peer community initiative is an interesting one. You can publish you can submit your paper to one of the 17 communities of peer community and then if your paper is peer review, is accepted for peer review, you get the peer review, and then you can publish your paper in their Diamond open access journal. So this could be, for example, a model.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, I'm about to open the famous Pandora's box here. So the first question that arrived is this. What does the panel think of rights retention as a strategy for supporting researchers in developing countries to make their work open access?
I could try. Well, I mean, rights retention is a big question at the moment. I mean, it bases on copyright and contract law. The authors own their research, and when you publish, you sign an agreement with the publisher, which then transfers the rights to the publisher. And if by using this rights retention concept, authors retain their rights and refuse to sign publishing agreements that transfer all their rights directly to the publisher. And of course, most open access publishing, it's a publication agreement, or it's a license to publish, which does the authors usually to retain the rights. So it could work, for individuals in low income countries, but the problem is you have to then be willing to negotiate a publication agreement every single time. So you'd need, for it to work, it would really need individual national policies or institutional policies where the institution has an institutional rights retention agreement where all authors then follow this, so they have the support of their institution, or even a national level agreement if such a thing were. I don't know if anyone's actually considering such a thing. Just at the OAI 13 conference last week, and I think John Walensky, of the Public Knowledge Project and Open Journal, one of the founders of Open Journal Systems, mentioned that this might be national negotiations of rights might be one way to for open to change the paradigm and you know, make the goal of worldwide open access possible. Although I've probably misrepresented slightly. So he mentioned it. I don't know if anyone's actually tried this national level rights retention, but there is potential there. It would be very tricky, I guess is what I'd say. I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much. Have any other questions come in?
No, so far, no.
Okay. Maybe we can add one more. I'm curious, so, and we'll just do it quickly because we are getting near the end of our time. Open access has been the focus of our discussion today, but it fits in the context of open science in general, which Paula, you've mentioned a few times. So I'm curious, do you in your roles also address kind of adjacent open science topics like open data or protocols and methods articles, or maybe even citizen science or various aspects? Or is it somewhere else in the organization, and is it coordinated? How is that working for you at your organization?
Okay, yes. No, it is my responsibility. I mean, we have a strong support by our governance, and it is very important to have this link between all these aspects. So fair data, the MPs, APCs, or the different color of open access, and so on. So we have concentrated all these responsibilities in a single unit.
I would love actually to ask you all so much more, but we're very close to the end of our time. So I want to make sure we don't keep you any longer than you need to. So I'm just going to go ahead and say a huge thank you to all of you, to everybody in our audience for listening and for sending in some questions, and each of you, obrigado and grazie mille and tusen tak and thank you. Thanks so much. We would like to remind everybody to stay on and complete the survey, which will help us create more interesting future events. And we invite you also to follow Karger Publishers on LinkedIn and on X, or Twitter, the former Twitter, so that you can keep up with what's happening and find out about the next events. If you have any questions on anything, you can reach out to us anytime. I can be reached at open@karger.com. Yeah, and I'll see if Fran wants to add anything, but let me just say, have a wonderful day or evening wherever you are. So thanks so much. Fran, do you want to add anything else?
Just repeat what he said. So thank you, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for attending. And we'll be sending around all the information. And stay tuned for our next panel's discussion on AI at the end of November. Thanks again, everybody.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.